Welcome everyone, you're watching Conversations with Alanki. An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, said Martin Luther King. Today I will be in conversation with someone who has been very bold in voicing out his concerns pertaining to inequality and injustice. Today I will be in conversation with Member of Parliament Shanakiyan Rasamanickam. Welcome to this conversation.
Thank you, Alanki. Good to have a chat with you again.
Yes, it's my third conversation with you, third time having you on the show. So getting straight to it, we just celebrated Independence Day in Colombo. And Independence Day was celebrated extravagantly in Colombo while you participated in Black Independence in Batticaloa. What message did you wish to convey to Sri Lankans?
Well, Alanki, I think it just so happens that we end up having a conversation every time there is something that's significant that I end up doing in the north or the east, and it just has been a coincidence. We haven't planned it. So it's another such event that I, in fact, organized in Batticaloa. It was called the Black Independence Day, 75th Black Independence Day. It was arranged by the Ilangai Thamirasakachi, and all our party stalwarts and our MPs participated in it. The thought of doing such a program came in November when President Ranil Wickremesinghe invited the Tamil National Alliance for a dialogue to resolve the outstanding pending issues. See, our party has been part of these sort of dialogues since independence, since 1948. And these dialogues, happen for a few months or maybe even sometimes for a year or two, and then absolutely no results come out of it. But however, this time it was slightly different. The president himself gave a timeline and said, by the 4th of February, I will resolve this. If I can't resolve this by the 4th of February, this will never be resolved. Or he said something to that effect. So when he said that in Parliament, somewhere in November, when I spoke during the budget, I warned the president. I said that if this is not resolved by the date that you have stipulated, I will be conducting a Black Independence Day in Batticaloa to tell the world that the Tamils have been taken for a ride one more time by another leader of the country. Now, independence it's a questionable, it's a very sensitive, or it's a very controversial topic. Some people feel that, regardless of whatever the country situation is, that, we are independent, we have received independence from the British. However bad the situation may be, we are, we have been taken to this situation by our own people, and we'd still be happy that we are free from the British. Now, this sort of narrow-minded thinking, people with such narrow-minded thinking, have really criticized my move to hold a Black Independence Day in Batticaloa. But to be honest with you, tell me honestly, do you think all Sri Lankans are independent or are able to celebrate independence 75 years after? I would say no. All Sri Lankans lack independence. But when you look at it, the majority community, they lack the independence that they expected in terms of corruption, finance, accountability, or quality of life, or it's more so economy-oriented issues. Whereas the Tamil-speaking people of this country do not have the political independence also. Now, someone could say, why would you say there is no political independence? So up until 1948, it was not just the Sinhala people who fought for independence. There are prominent, eminent names in the Muslim community. There are prominent persons in the Tamil community.
Indeed.
I'm not going to name drop them, but they all fought together for the independence from the British. But when the British left the country, all our fates, the fate of all citizens, were left with the majority community, because that's how the political structure was. So the majoritarian thinking started from there. So since independence, every leader that has been elected by the majority community, because 25% of the Tamil-speaking people in this country will not be able to decide who is going to govern this country. So all the poor decisions that the majority community has taken has impacted the Tamil-speaking people also. So overall, all Sri Lankans don't have financial independence or independence when it comes to quality of life, or the kind of independence that we deserve, which is why the Aragalaya and all of these things came up. But if you look at the Tamil-speaking people, look at the Muslim community. How can a Muslim person in this country feel that 75th Independence Day is a day to celebrate when they were even not allowed to bury their own loved ones who died with COVID-19? They were forcefully cremated. Muslim women are still, in some areas have issues with wearing, the head cover, the hijab. And, there are Muslim people or Muslim religious leaders are still attacked. Now, just for an example, just a few days ago, we saw some monks come closer to Parliament and burn the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. That is literally burning the Constitution of the country. Now, you think about a Muslim Maulavi doing that, let alone burning the Constitution, bring the Sunday newspaper and burn it outside Parliament. He would be arrested under the Prevention of Terrorism Act and locked away for years. Think about a Catholic or a Christian leader doing so. Think about a Hindu religious leader doing so. So, there is, this is not trying to, shallow people could say, look, Shanakiyan's trying to, divide us on religious lines or ethnic lines. That's not the truth. For us to go forward as a country, we need to ensure that the diversity of Sri Lankans is our strength. Now, this has been used to divide us. And on the 75th Independence Day, like I warned the President, we held the 75th Black Independence Day. And also we were very clear. I think as a signature or as a signal to the world, we wore the same cap that Gandhi wore. So that's to say that, our fight for our political rights, we are doing it in a non-violent way. So we had it's a symbol of the non-violent protest is the Gandhi cap. So, which is why we wore the cap. So, it's a message that we have told the entire country. We have told the world. At the simultaneous to the President's Independence Day event, we held a Black Independence Day event in Batiklo. But the only difference is that we didn't spend, 20 million or 200 million rupees on the Independence Day. I think it was around 500,000 rupees.
At a time when people are struggling.
Yeah, I think we had spent 15 million rupees just for portable toilets for the Independence Day celebration. As of the 2nd of January or 2023, the Independence Day celebrations, as of then, the numbers were 23 million or 29 million. We got it through a right to information RTI that was filed. So naturally, there's such a large amount of money that was spent when there's no Panadol at hospitals. So how can we really, as Sri Lankans, approve of that? Do we really need to see jets flying around to say that we are independent? So there's a lot of there's a lot of detail behind this Black Independence Day, but I would limit it to the fact that I don't think that all Sri Lankans have received independence. The majority community may be happy with the political independence because they are able to elect their own leaders, but the Tamil community or the Tamil speaking community do not have both.
And you did touch upon the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. So the President wants to fully enforce it. But there are certain factions that oppose it. How do you say this?
Well, Alanki, this 13th Amendment has been a toy that has been played with. First of all, there is no such thing as, actually to do anything with the 13th Amendment. 13th Amendment to the Constitution is already there.
Right.
Now we have come up to the 21st Amendment since then. First of all, if President is genuinely interested in implementing all the powers vested under the 13th Amendment, first we need the provincial councils to function. Provincial councils haven't functioned since 2017 in the north and in the east. And I think overall in the country, no provincial council has functioned since 2018 or 19, I think. So first you hold the provincial council elections, then we will see how these powers are being used. So if there's anybody, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was born out of an agreement between two countries, the Indo-Lanka Accord. So just because some say that, that should be scrapped, you can't just, take away an international agreement that a country has made. Historically, Sri Lanka has failed because we have taken our commitments very lightly. Mahinda Rajapaksa, Gotabaya Rajapaksa thought that, assurances given by the government of Sri Lanka to the Human Rights Council could just be, cancelled just because the Porto fellows think that they can do it. Mm-hmm. This country has been destroyed because of thinking like this. Even if you look at some of the monks who came to burn the constitution near the parliament, I don't want to mention the name, but there's one monk in a light yellow robe. Now he has 21 criminal charges against him in the Batiklo courts. So these are not things that he has done for the Sinhala Buddhist nation. These are criminal offences that he has committed, like assaulting police officers, assaulting Ceylon Electricity Board officers who went there to ask him to pay his electricity bill. He has assaulted a divisional secretariat, a lady. You see, and there are more than he's accused of stealing cows who are, from people, and he sells them for meat. Now, Monk is selling meat. Now he has a shotgun. He's accused of shooting cows, just for meat. So these characters, are questionable. We have a lot of respect for Buddhism. We have a lot of respect for, there are a lot of very genuine monks who actually, practice the way of life that Buddha preached. But this Buddhism that they seem to be propagating is probably Buddha would, question these so-called monks who are in saffron robes. Just because they're in saffron robes does not mean that they are fit to be monks.
So moving on to the next question, there are pressing demands for a real system change. Now, even though the government and president change, we don't see this system change.
Well, I mean, I brought the president's throne speech with me. In the throne speech, I've noted a few things. Now, president has mentioned a few bills that he's hoping. Now, when you talk about system change, president in his throne speech has made some commitments about accountability and about the system change, I would say. So if I was to take your attention, it says on page 10 in the English version, it says, however, as soon as this critical condition is addressed, we will take another step to eliminate the recurrence of such a crisis. This is, I think he's talking about the economic crisis. For this purpose, we are introducing an anti-corruption bill. We are taking steps to include the Stolen Assets Recovery Initiative into this bill together with the World Bank and the United Nations. Now, number 10. So this is the sort of system change that I would say some Sri Lankans expected. Stolen Assets Recovery, Anti-Corruption Bill. So now, if the president is very serious about, actually implementing these bills, there are so many bills that are already presented to Parliament from private members. I know Honorable Iran Wickramaratne has presented a bill about asset declaration. I know there are many other bills that have been presented to Parliament as private members' bills. Now, these bills can be taken up by the president straight away. There is no need for president to draft a new, the country doesn't have to wait for the president to come up with a new bill to deal with corruption. There are already things that, are in the constitution that can be used. So, and now I think it has almost been, quite a number of months since president got elected. Do we see anything different that is happening in the country in terms of corruption? Do we see anything in terms of accountability? We still see people stealing. We still see politicians being accused of large amounts of, corruption. I mean, they were reported on the news. So, and also, leave all that aside, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who is the biggest criminal who destroyed this country's economy, is an economic criminal. He's committed economic crimes. President Ranil Wickremesinghe is seen, observing some religious observances at the Gangaramaya temple, I think at the Perahera. Both of them are, touching some relic at the temple at the Perahera together. So, president, is side by side with a man who committed economic crimes in this country. How is that going? How is he going to be expected to hold this man accountable for the crimes that he's committed? Man who, is accused of coming into power after spreading hatred. What's happened to the Easter Sunday attack investigation? There's not a single word mentioned about the Easter Sunday attack in this throne speech. One of the biggest mandates that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa got from 6.9 million people is to bring to justice the Easter Sunday attack criminals.
Do you think the Easter attack victims got justice?
Do you think they got justice?
Because, former president and others had to compensate by paying money, but is that real justice?
See, reparations and justice are two different things. If you can, who are we to decide what value someone's life is given?
Indeed.
In Batiklo, in my district alone, around 31 people died in the Easter Sunday attacks when the bomb blast went at the Zion church. And out of which about 16 of them were kids who were under 15 because the bomb went off near the Sunday school. Now these mothers and these fathers and relatives in Batiklo, the only source that they have, the only hope that they have about, getting justice for their children is through, the voice that I raise in Batiklo on behalf of them. The so-called advocates of the champions of the Easter Sunday attack call for justice are now cabinet ministers seated in the cabinet. They have just gone quiet completely. Not a word from them about Easter Sunday, justice for Easter Sunday victims. So reparations is one thing. Justice is what's important. Who was behind this? Who was behind the killing of a 4-year-old child in Batiklo? Was it people who were close to Gotabaya Rajapaksa? Was it Gotabaya Rajapaksa? Was it to bring Gotabaya Rajapaksa to power? Is Ranil Wickremesinghe now covering up because he's filling in Gotabaya Rajapaksa's shoes? Was it Maithripala Sirisena? Now, these questions need answers, just like, the mothers of the missing people. Now, the mothers of the missing people are still asking, the government, what happened to my son? I handed over my son to the security forces. What happened to my son? If you have surrendered if you took your brother and you handed him over to the military as a precautionary measure, because the military asked them to surrender, wouldn't you want to know what happened to your brother? Would you be happy with just reparations? It's very interesting that this president has, in his throne speech, he has said quoted a few eminent, or rather, few citizens of the country, Mati Shodavatta, Clifford Fernando. In fact, Clifford Fernando is a senior at school. I know him quite well. He's a schoolmate from Trinity College. Vijay Singha. And then, I am surprised that there is not a single Tamil or Muslim name that he has. I checked the newspaper article also. Most of the comments published were from not from Tamil-speaking people. And then also there is another 2 names mentioned, Chenuti Pereira and Namadi Pereira, who are twins, I think, who came to, had given President some CD that says, I will not leave the country, which President had requested the television channels to broadcast. Now, if President Ranil Wickremesinghe takes a few comments from children and students from the north and the east, I don't think those comments would be very similar to, I don't want to leave the country. It will be more like, dear President, where is my father who surrendered to the army 13 years ago? If the citizens were to write, would be, dear President, when are you going to release the land that my ancestors lived on? Dear President, when are you going to give me my school back, where the army is still holding my school and I have no school to go to? Now, the questions that these students would have put forward are very different, which is why, Alanki, it's high time that we recognize. I really want the entire country to understand, there is no way that we can only look at one part of the country and think that these are the problems.
Right.
Now, for me as an individual, I am okay. I have lived in Colombo, I have lived in Kandy, I have lived in Batiklo, I have lived out of the country, right? But for people who are born, brought up in the north and the east, who see their future in the north and the east, who live there, their mindsets are absolutely going to never, change, or we can't even expect them to change if this is the sort of mentality that the leaders are going to have, because it's one-sided. This entire comments that have been put forward are one-sided. There is only one community that is being represented in the president's throne speech. If the president didn't have access to comments from other citizens of the country who are Tamil-speaking people, I would have been more than happy to let him speak to a few. There are eminent people who could voice out their concerns. So what I'm trying to say is that justice, or, for missing people, for Easter Sunday victims, justice, people who seek justice, for them, if you speak about reparations only, or if you speak about reparations first and then let's look at justice, I don't think we are ever going to move on. We are going to keep going back.
And what do you suggest that the current government, or any government for that matter, does for the minority communities in Sri Lanka? It's been so many years since the war ended.
See, first of all, we don't consider ourselves a minority. We are only a minority in numbers. We are a numerical minority. We are a people. So we have our own culture, we have our own language.
But they need to be equally represented.
Precisely. Singing the national anthem in Tamil alone is not going to cut it. You see, we should be able to decide our own fate in the regions that we live. Now, this sounds, when you put it like that, it sounds like Shanakiyan saying this country should be separate. No, we are talking about one Sri Lanka. Within one Sri Lanka, maximum devolution of power, where we decide. Now, let's say, for an example, if there's a market in Batiklo, what the rates that market should decide, what rates, the taxation rate that market should hire should be decided from people who live in that area. Mm-hmm. How can a minister from Colombo dictate what prices should be in Mullaitivu for taxation? They have absolutely no interest in developing Mullaitivu either, because their cabinet ministers are focused on developing their electorates. And Tamil people thought in the 2020 election that the only way to develop our areas was to elect people on the government. We have 6 MPs in the government since 2020. They're just absolutely, focused on stealing and looting the country. Nothing has been done for the people. And the reason why they say that is that they've openly said that the government has not supported their initiatives to develop the North and the East because they haven't been given cabinet portfolios. So there's one cabinet minister in the North and one in the East, but that's not how we see, the issues of our people being resolved.
Mm-hmm.
For our issues to be resolved, there has to be, power has to be shared. If the power is given, then we can do it. I mean, but our people have given us a mandate. The Tamil National Alliance, my party, since 1956, our people have given us a mandate to resolve our political issues. So there is no point in being just a darling of, the rest of the country.
But do you see these being resolved?
Not at all. If in the president's throne speech, he has mentioned a few things that he could do to resolve these issues, but he needs to walk the talk. We're sick of hearing these things.
Precisely, one needs to walk the talk. What do you hope to do to change this?
Well, keep exerting pressure, keep building pressure up, keep voicing out our concerns, stay with our people, stand up for our people, bring out the concerns, call out, fake promises when you see it, because we don't have any other dealings with the government. We don't take government contracts. We don't do business with the government. We don't depend on the government. We don't have corruption-related cases. So we are not obliged to the government, or we don't have to. I think that has been the strength of the Tamil National Alliance MPs, because we don't depend on the governments. Most MPs in the rest of the country, have done corrupt deals, or have, they say file tino manga, they have files. There's no files about us. So we can stand up for our people. We will do that. And this is not, the issues of the Tamil people not being resolved, the longer it takes, the further Sri Lanka is going to go down a hole. The economy has come to this point because the Tamil issues haven't been addressed. Somebody can say, what nonsense, the economy has come to this because Ajit Niwad Cabral didn't float the dollar, or because Gotabaya decided to not go to the IMF. No, these issues started in 1948. Gradually, they've built up. And Gota, unfortunately or fortunately for the entire country, before he could mess it up even further, took the worst decisions possible to tip it over. He could have also kind of, nurtured the problem a little further and, handed it over to the next guy with a bigger problem. But this guy, just went absolutely crazy and, destroyed the country within a year. Whereas it was going down that path. If not now, it would have happened in 2025. So now at least we need to resolve this. But I think in President's speech, this is a very, as we are critical of the president, but in his speech, there are a few things that he has mentioned that, that we actually approve, or we encourage, or we welcome. But is he actually going to deliver on these promises, or is it going to be just a throne speech that has been delivered to appease the world? The entire world is looking at Sri Lanka to see if actual real system change is happening in Sri Lanka. So this speech could be just to show, I want to do it, but will he actually do it?
One has to wait and see. But Shanakiyan, there's another recurring issue in Sri Lanka. MPs crossing over from side to side, especially from the opposition parties to the ruling party. And this is an issue because this ensures that there's always a majority vote, which can be guaranteed because of this. What can be done about this?
Well, I think
it leads to a lot of corruption.
If you're elected from a party and you want to cross over, or you want to support a government's bill because it's good for the country, I don't see anything wrong with it. But you support a government's bill, and from there onwards, that you take government portfolios, government ministries, cabinet portfolios, district development committee chairpersons, I think that shouldn't be allowed. I think, if they cross over, I think if they leave the party that they are elected in and join a government, I think their MPs, that it should get cancelled.
But nothing's being done about it. It's been happening for a very long time.
Yes, and I think we need new laws about it, along with many other laws in this country. But even the laws that are in Parliament, like I said, there's a law about asset declaration. The government doesn't want to take it. So how do we bring reform when, people who are in the hot seat don't want to bring in reform? Same goes to the opposition. When members of Parliament, they're in the opposition, their narratives change when they come into the government. There's historic evidence over the last 75 years. So this is what I'm saying, Alanki. as a Tamil people or a Tamil MP, our futures are also left with the majority community. Now, even if we want to do the right thing, what can we do with 10 Tamil MPs, or if you take overall altogether 25 MPs, out of 225 MPs, we are only about 25 to 30 Tamil MPs put together across the country, right? So our fate has always been decided by the poor decisions that the leaders of the majority community, elected by the majority community, have taken, which is why we talk about devolution of power so much, that at least in our own areas, the smaller decisions, not decisions like foreign policy, defense, or borrowing, or foreign, or immigration and immigration, not major decisions, but smaller decisions that relates to our day-to-day life, that we should be able to decide what's best for us and give us the power to do that. That's where it's a good place that we've come to from your question.
And also, I mean, there's no doubt that, the tax cuts by the previous regime actually caused the economic crisis. But now many taxes will be imposed on people and businesses, and there are many professionals who oppose this. How do you see this?
Well, the country needs taxes to run. Government needs revenue. The problem here is that in 2019, as soon as Gotabaya Rajapaksa became president, actually in 2018, for the short period of time that Mahinda Rajapaksa came as prime minister under the 52-day government in 2018, this is when they started giving tax holidays, tax cuts. Just for an example, the sugar content in drinks, when you have a soft drink, the sugar content, Mangala Samalavira's budget, there was a significant tax for the drinks with higher sugar content. As soon as Mahinda Rajapaksa came under the 52-day government, he brought it down to zero, only to help these corporates make more money. Why else? Because it's not, you see, drinking more sugar is detrimental to people. So sugary drinks were taxed higher. The companies that were producing these sugary drinks either had to pay a higher amount of tax to the government to produce these drinks, or had to reduce the number of drinks because the consumption will reduce. So Mahinda Rajapaksa came under the 2018 52-day government, brought the tax to zero, right? Loss of revenue to the government. And then when they went back also, then after, again, it was hard to go from zero to, back to a higher percentage of tax, because the companies had already, it had come down to zero. Just not that, many people have discussed is the pay tax, the income tax, the corporate tax, all sorts of taxes that the government, where that government's revenue streams were destroyed by the Rajapaksa government along with the finance minister Basil Rajapaksa. Country needs taxes to run. But unfortunately, just like our country, Sri Lankans also have borrowed more than what we can afford. All citizens of the country have also, our borrowings are high. We have spent money that we don't have. We have used our credit cards. In more than what we earn, our spending has been higher. I'm talking about a number of people who are in the middle income category. Our spending patterns have been, probably it doesn't, it's not on par with our incomes. So now, all of a sudden, when a higher taxation is put on people, people are burdened with it. Now, I know many people who because their tax holidays were given, they had a lot of money left, from their salary, which they then went and invested in property or bought houses, and they took up loans. And now all of a sudden, interest rates have gone up. And if you hadn't fixed your interest rate, you have to now pay a much higher interest rate than you initially anticipated. And you have to pay a higher tax so that your income has shrunk. And then your interest expenditure has gone up. So naturally, people are protesting. So this has to be something that is done gradually. People need to be given a breathing space. People need to be given some time to adapt. But this was so abrupt that people are now, once their tax is being cut off, they're left with a few thousand rupees per month to get around their ordinary lives. So in one sense, I can't say that Sri Lanka doesn't need taxes, because then I'll be another fool like Gotabaya Rajapaksa. But on the other sense, this being so sudden, people are going to be struggling. So I don't know where we are going to find the balance for this, but the way to do this is government can increase their revenue by cutting down expenditure. On one hand, we are taxing, our citizens. On the other hand, we are spending 200 million on Independence Day. On the one hand, we are cutting down, we are asking our citizens to cut down, or, buckle up. On the other hand, we are appointing more cabinet ministers and state ministers. State ministers are given vehicles and fuel unnecessary when there is no development work.
Sri Lanka is such a small country. Do we really need that many ministers?
well, if there's power is devolved, we don't need any cabinet ministers at all. We only need like 10 cabinet ministers. But in this today's context, there are some state ministers where the budgetary allocations for the state ministry is only to run the minister's office and the income. I mean, rather, the minister's expenditure. So there is no real work happening through the minister's ministry. So there are so many other examples, but even cutting down on those expenditures is not going to cut it. I mean, it's not going to be enough to increase the government's revenue. So the only way is to attract foreign investments. And we are doing everything possibly wrong to attract foreign investments. We are doing the worst that a country can do to chase away investors, right? In this country, when protesters are being attacked, when there are protests still going on, when people are being detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, when there is no accountability, when there is so much corruption, nothing has been done to deal with it. Why would anyone come and invest in this country? So, in the gist of it is that on one hand, citizens are asked to buckle up, pay more taxes. On the other hand, the government spending is still lavish, where there are district development committee chairs who are being given. In my district, I have 2 state ministers. I think per day they spend more than 150,000 rupees on fuel alone, because 3 or 4 vehicles to carry them and their supporters from one end of the district to the other, with no work to be done because there's no budgetary allocations for their ministries. So when people see this, it's natural that people get on the streets and oppose these things.
I mean, you did say that even if the government cuts down on its expenditure, it might not be sufficient. But I think as a government, they should be more accountable to the public, because this is taxpayer money at the end of the day. Recently, I did come across an article on the Daily Mirror which stated that there had been no major cost cuts in the budget allocated for the president's or prime minister's offices and the cabinet of ministers. I mean, do you think the government should be more accountable and more responsible given the severity of the crisis?
We put forward 5 simple proposals that the government can take up to increase the government's revenue. One such proposal was to increase the taxes on tobacco. When we increase the taxes on tobacco, mind you, this is not asking the cigarette prices to be increased. We are asking the company to be taxed. It's one company that is running a monopoly in Sri Lanka, the British American Tobacco Company. So even if we tax them a little higher, we could have collected 50 billion rupees from just one company, just one decision that was taken. After we do that also, that British American Tobacco is still going to have a large amount of profits left after tax. It's not like we are going to make that company go bankrupt. Second, we proposed very, very, very small things to increase the government's revenue. We proposed that the government cuts down its expenditure on the defense ministry. During such economic crisis, budget has allocated money to complete the defense headquarters in Battaramulla, right? And right now, I think 20 million or some crazy amount of money is being given for electricity only, and only 1/4 of the building has been completed. So, instead of taxing people more money, putting more tax burden on people. I mean, the sugar scam, we spoke about the sugar scam. The tax, not just the scam, the differences that we can do in the slight changes that we can do in the taxation can bring a large amount of money in one lot where, ordinary citizens are not burdened. So none of these proposals were accepted. The president just went ahead and passed the budget because they have numbers in parliament. So parliament, president's budget, prime minister's budget, cabinet minister's budget, I don't think affected at all. It's the ordinary citizens of this country who are affected.
All right, we have come to the end of this conversation. Is there any message you'd like to convey to those watching this?
Well, 2023 is going to be a challenging year. I'm sure people are sick of hearing this every year. But all Sri Lankans have been waiting to see what happens with the IMF. So just to say that IMF is only going to make the country be able to, an IMF agreement will ensure that we are able to borrow again. So right now we have 50+ billion of debt. With an IMF agreement, the country our credit ratings will get better, and we might be able to start borrowing again faster. And is that the kind of economy that we want to have in the future also? Is that the kind of country that we want to pass down onto the generations to come? So I think it's important that we all get together and identify the root cause for these problems, that the root cause for this economy collapsing. And I would say the root cause for this economic collapsing is that as Sri Lankans, equality to all citizens, political power shared amongst all citizens, will be a starting point, will be a message that we send to the world, saying that Sri Lanka is turning a new page. Sri Lanka is starting all over again. 75 years ago, we made the decisions of excluding different communities in this country. 75 years of majoritarianism in this country. We have decided, we have learned from our mistakes. We are going to start fresh. Now, this message, if it can be sent, that will be a huge signaling to the world that Sri Lanka has actually indeed turned a new page. But, right now there's a new political force trying to emerge, the likes of Vimal Weerawansa, Gammam Pillars. The only mechanism that they know, the only art that they know, the only weapon that they know is racism, spreading racism. So Sri Lankans got together in 2022 to stand up against a corrupt, racist government. Have we all forgotten what we stood up for? What did the people protesting there? Aragalaya people can now say drug addicts were there, FSP or JVP or IUSF or whatever. But there were ordinary middle-class citizens who were protesting for a system change. Sri Lankans have a very short, memory sometimes, I think. Have we forgotten what we stood up for? So let's all get together and work towards that. Let's not get distracted by the likes of these Veeravansas who have destroyed this country so far. Sat on Mahinda Rajapaksha's lap as long as he could. And as soon as he figured Mahinda Rajapaksha was not he was a spent force, now he's trying to champion Mahinda Rajapaksha's weapon. So let's not fall into this trap. Some people can watch this interview and say racist, Shanakiyan, whatever you want. But I'm speaking on behalf of the country. Some of these things need to be said. Some of these discussions need to be had. We need to speak about it openly. We can't always stay quiet and expect things to fall in place. If we want real change, we need to make it happen. So let's all join hands and let's hope that 2023 we can focus on at least making some progress in resolving some of these root causes that has brought this country to this point.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and for this conversation. And I wish you all the best to continue fighting the good fight as you have always been doing. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Alanki. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. We have come to the end of another fruitful and meaningful conversation. I will be back with another episode soon. Until then, stay safe, take care, and God bless.